Hello, sixth grade. We're going to be starting on our notes and make sure they are titled Creating Histograms. Now, a histogram is a very specific type of display. It is a special type of bar graph used to show the frequency of data using equal intervals. Make sure you get all of that. It is a special type of bar graph used to show the frequency of data using equal intervals. So you've seen a bar graph before, but this is something a little bit more specific, and it has to do with probability and statistics. In a histogram, there are no, underline no, spaces. Means all the bars are really like they line up right next to each other. There's literally no gaps in between the bars that I will draw for you in just a moment. And the reason for that is because the data is, I'm going to use a different color. The data is continuous. When making a histogram, data should be divided into intervals. So when we were talking about line plots and number lines, making sure that we're counting by ones or counting by twos or counting by threes. The same has to be said for creating histograms, is they have to be equal intervals. You can't just make up random numbers and go 1, 2, 9, 95, 104, 2000. There needs to be equal intervals, like multiples marching on. Each interval should have the same number of values in it. So here's the thing. There actually could be groups of numbers. So what I mean by that is instead of saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this whole chunk, I'll show you, this whole chunk might be worth 0 through 4 or 5 through 9. That's just my answer key, but you'll have that on your paper in just a minute. But it's talking about instead of one singular value, you might say like grades kinder through first, they're all in this chunk. Then grades second through third are in their own chunk, then third and fourth, and then sixth, well, that wouldn't work because they wouldn't be equal numbers of groups. So I probably would have to do TK and kinder, first and second, third and fourth, fifth and sixth. Now all my groups have each 2 grade levels in them. Going back to the notes, each bar in a histogram shows the frequency. So that means how many times or how many kindergartners are there. I'm counting how many kindergartners. There's another kindergartner, kindergartner, kindergartner. It's frequently happening. It's almost, I don't want to say repeating, but they are very similar. In a histogram, the bars must be the same width. They have to be the same amount wide. Basically, you want to keep them similar sizes because it can be very misleading. I'm going to use the back. I'm going to use this piece of paper to show you. If I'm making a histogram and I have one bar that looks like this, and I have another bar that looks like this, you're going to automatically think this is a much bigger group. It's very misleading. When making a histogram, you actually need to make sure that all of the columns or bars or whatever it is you are doing are roughly around the same size, that they're similar in size. Or the same can be said with, like, you can't make it too skinny either. This data looks very confusing, and I don't understand what it is they are talking about. So if I want to know how many people are in kindergarten, this is how many people are in first grade, this is how many people are in second grade, this is how many people are in third, this is how many people are in fourth. It could be like that, or it could have different groupings of numbers. But I just wanted to show you, well, that's what they mean when they need it to be the same width, and we want them in equal intervals, so that way the data makes sense. So step 1 to create a histogram is you need to decide what are your, intervals. Are you doing groups? Are you counting by ones? Are you counting by twos? You need to figure that out. Step 2 is then you sort the data into each interval. So like my quick little example back here, I went by grade. I need to know all the people in kindergarten. I need to know all the people in first, how many people are in second, et cetera, et cetera. I need to know what pieces of my data are going to go where in my chart, my histogram. Then step 4, I'm going to use a different, I skipped step 3, excuse me. I need to then mark the X's. Those are usually the categories you are talking about, which I automatically, without thinking, did the same thing back here. This is me marking my X's. And then over usually going up and down, this is usually the value or the numbers. Now necessarily it might not be a grade because these are technically numbers. This is usually the identifier, and then how tall represents the actual unit value of whatever category it is you were discussing. Step 3 was mark the X's. Those are usually the categories or the values. I should add that. Step 4 is to draw the bars or columns to represent the frequency. Remember, the bars must touch. There can't be any gaps between them. Going back to my example, see how they are smacked right next to each other? Like books in a bookshelf. You can't have any gaps. So over here, if I was drawing a histogram and I started doing this is all kinds of crazy. They don't match width. They don't match, well, they won't match height. That's perfectly fine. But this one's way too fat. This one's way too skinny. There's a big gap in the middle. This is no good. This is what I need. Something stuck right next to each other, labeled and clear. The bars must touch each other and they must be the same width. That's how wide or far apart they are. And lastly, of course, you need to label all parts of the histogram. So that way, if somebody else got this data, if I gave you this, you're like, I really don't understand what this is saying. If I said number of students, and over here I counted by 5s, now you can kind of figure out, oh, there's this many kids in kinder, there's this many kids in first. You need to give all the clues to the person reading it so they can figure it out. So we're going to create a histogram with this data set below. The first step, I'm going to create the intervals. Well, actually, my intervals. That would be the groups that I'm creating. That's what this is right here. So number of minutes. So right here, I'm going to label, number of minutes. And it looks like I have 1, 2, 3, 4 categories. So I want to try and break this up as evenly as I can. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 categories. This will be the minutes 0 through 4. Next one would be 5 through 9. This one would be 10 through 14. This one would be 15 and 19. What's different about this and a line plot is we marked every single individual data point. A histogram is used when you have a bigger collection of data, because I'm going to say how many numbers fell in this category, how many numbers fell in this category, and how often did it repeat. That's what that frequency was talking about earlier. Okay, so I did my first step. I created my intervals. In this case, I had 1, 2, 3, 4 categories right here. Got my 4 categories. Next, I need to sort the data into each interval. So now I'm just going to focus on this for a second, and I'm going to actually tally how many of the numbers in my data fit in my categories. So let's look. 5, well, that's going to be 5 through 9. Cross that out. 6, it's going to be 5 through 9. That falls in this category. 11, falls in this one. 3 falls in this one. 6, it falls between 5 and 9, so I'm going to cross that out, put it here. 5 goes there as well. 12, that would go here. 2 goes there. 10. Make sure also that you're marking them off as you are collecting and organizing your data so you don't accidentally label something more than once or leave anything out. 13 goes here. 19 goes there. 13 goes there. 19 goes here. 15, almost messed that up. That goes there. 18 goes here as well. 15 goes here. 18 goes here, 13 goes there, and 16 goes here. So I have a total of 3 values in this category, 4 values in that category, 6 values in this category, and a frequency of 7 values in this category. So that's my frequency. How many numbers did I see fit in this category? Now, zoom out. Now I need to mark the axes. So I already have my intervals, so that means this side is my frequency. So since my highest number of my frequency is 7, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines already pre-drawn for me, I'm going to go ahead and use that. So this is my, I'm going to turn this to the side. Oops. This is my frequency. So it's asked, I collected all the numbers. There were 3 numbers that fit in this category. So that means on this interval, number of minutes, 0 through 4, I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3. I'm just going to color this in purple for now. So I've shown the frequency of how many values fit in this category. All right, I'm going to use a different color. I'm going to go to the next interval, the next category, numbers 5 through 9. There was a frequency of 4 numbers fitting in there, so I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sure your bars touch and that they are, I kind of already spaced it out in the beginning, which helped me achieve an equal or similar width of all of the columns or the bars that I'm making. You do not have to color these in, but I am just to show, especially I'm using different colors to show the difference between these elements in the histogram. All right, got that one done, got that one done. Now I'm on this interval. It's a frequency of 6, so I'm going to go all the way up to line 6. I also like to find the line first and then go down, because sometimes Miss Madera can get very sloppy or go too quick, and then I might make the line too far, and then I can't go back. So I recommend going to your end point and then work your way down. Make sure your bars are still touching. And this one I'm just going to do a dot pattern, just to break it up and we can see the difference in the data. All right, and last but not least, I have the highest frequency in this interval, 15 to 19. I saw numbers fitting in that category was happening 7 times, so I'm going to go all the way up to 7. And I'm going to go all the way to the end of my histogram. And there you have it. It sounds more complicated when looking at the steps, because basically what you need to do is figure out your groupings, which in this case they gave it to us. I have 4 different groupings. Break apart your data and sort them into their correct categories. That's what these numbers are, is the frequency. How many times did I see something in this category? And then my favorite part, or the preferred part, is putting it in a graph to see, well, looking at this data, I can look, instead of looking at this long list of numbers, I can take one glance at this graph and I can tell you right now, more people spent 15 to 19 minutes than the other categories. And that's what a histogram's for. It's to display the data.